Hey everybody, welcome back to the first hour of the Young Turks with Anna Kasparian and myself. And I've been reading over your tweets over the course of this break that you've sent to us through hashtag TYT Live, and there are a lot of good ones.
Yes.
So I like Lapsed Catholic said, the only thing that stops a bad guy with an H-bomb is a good guy with an H-bomb. Just actually sort of accurate to some extent.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, so far, well, we didn't use H-bombs in the war, but we're the only ones who've deployed nuclear weapons.
No,
so.
look, I know people are going to make the criticism that this is comparing apples to oranges, but think about this for a second, okay? The U.S. wants to be the arbiter of which countries can have these types of weapons, right? Because they believe that some countries are too dangerous to have nuclear weapons. But we live in the same country that believes in giving everyone access to guns. Regardless, even if they're on a terrorist watch list.
I think they'd be okay with that if every country was populated with white people, white Christians. Then they think they'd be okay with it.
Here's the thing. Our country isn't just populated by white Christians. It's populated by all sorts of people.
I don't think they want them to have guns either.
They don't. That's exactly right. Which is why in, states like Ohio, right, Cleveland, Ohio, where the Tamir Rice shooting happened. Isn't that an open carry state?
Yeah. Again, I've gone over I've read up on the laws of why that doesn't necessarily stop the insanity of the police departments from gutting them down.
Right.
It doesn't actually make it illegal to do that. But you would assume that would affect the perception of threat when you see a gun being wielded.
Yeah, I mean, your state is in favor of open carry. So if people are openly carrying their weapons, how do you determine who's a bad actor with a gun versus a good actor with a gun? Yeah,
we were going to show a video of, I think it was on MSNBC, maybe CNN. They were interviewing a guy who runs a gun store, and he's doing the interview with a gun in his arms.
I saw that,
And they did the whole interview, and the cops didn't bust into his house and shoot him.
Weird.
Which I thought was weird because he was just carrying a gun. It was weird. Anyway, okay, a little bit more. Roar says, I can't help but think North Korea using a nuke is like me using a fat man in Fallout. And oddly enough, they actually have their own fat man. He runs the country. Okay, let's see. Ray for Madness says, the problem with North Korea is that they're completely unpredictable.
Oh, because Jake's not here, so we need someone to do that.
Hashtag filling in for Jake.
That's hilarious. What was that, Ray for Madness?
Ray for Madness, yeah. Okay, your mama says, Anna's bringing the passion and power in hour one. Love it. Also, that hair is killing it.
Oh, that's funny, because I put it up.
You're crazy, by the way.
Inside baseball for you guys, I fucking hate wearing my hair down. I hate it. I hate it.
I don't like it either. It makes me uncomfortable.
I love wearing my hair up. I just do. Maybe I need to get a pixie cut. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, maybe not. Let's see. Hashtag jealous of Clopey, maybe. Let's see. Angry Raider fan says, Obama's had 7 years to take your guns, people. It's not happening. But the problem with that is the idea that they'll eventually figure out we've been waiting so long and it's just not happening. People still think Jesus is coming back in 6 months. People don't learn. And then let's see. A winterized gnome says, a vision of the future. Someday John will become Bill's protege. He will leave TYT in a rage over the absurd nicknames. Hashtag sprinkles.
Oh my God, I could never imagine that happening. Out of everyone that works in this company, look, a lot of us are unwilling to sell out, which is why we work here, right? Like, there is money to be made in the media, and we're turning it down constantly. You are probably the one who is the least likely to
Really?
sell
Why do
out.
you say that?
Because I don't know, you don't seem turned on by money.
Not especially.
Yeah, you're not.
No.
You
look, if Bill was going to offer me, like, 5 figures, then maybe I'd have to go. I mean, come on, a change of lifestyle, yeah. I could move into a home.
You don't have to rent someone's closet anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, eventually they found me in there, though, and they did kick me out. Okay, we've got a few more stories we want to get to, important news from around the country, and a little bit of silly stuff as well from the campaign trail. We're going to be starting off with someone who is silly without meaning to be. America is currently waiting for the Oregon militiamen to run out of snacks. But what are they waiting for? In this video, you're going to see a man who is out in the snow, and apparently he's waiting for death. Let's watch.
He says he believes there's a warrant out for his arrest, and he does not anticipate respecting that warrant. He's got a gun here under the blanket. And Lavoy, why don't you tell us what your plan is?
I do not want the FBI, federal agents, have to go running around in the dark, kicking in doors, looking for me, okay? I want them to know exactly where I'm at.
So if they come here with an arrest warrant and they try to put cuffs on you, what's your plan?
Well, they're not going to just come up with a guy holding a rifle and put cuffs on him, okay? They're not going to do that.
What do you think they're going to do, and what are you prepared to do?
Well, I hope that they go home.
When that warrant comes down, when that arrest comes, what do you tend to do in response?
I have been raised in the country all my life. I love dearly to feel the wind on my face, to see the sunrise, to see the moon in the night. I have no intention of spending any of my days in a concrete box. And so I will, whatever days, and I believe that there'll be many, and hopefully prosperous days to come, I will spend them riding my horses, trying to take care of my cows, and that's what I will do. But I will not spend it in a box.
So to avoid getting in that box, you're ready to do what?
You guys have so many hypotheticals.
If they come here and try to arrest you, they
Yes.
point a gun at you, they try to put cuffs on you, how far are you willing to take this?
Well, don't point a gun at me. You don't point a gun at somebody unless you're going to shoot them. That's the first thing your thought is, don't point guns at people. And so I'm telling them right now, don't point guns at me.
So you're prepared to die, better dead than in a cell?
Absolutely. Dude, would you like to be in a cell? Nobody wants to live their life in a cell. Absolutely, I'm not going to live my life in a cell.
The incredible thing about that video that stands out to me the most is the sense of entitlement that he has, right? And there was a very thinly veiled threat there where, he was asked, what do you do if the cops show up with a warrant and they try to put cuffs on you? And he's like, well, I got that rifle.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing him, obviously. I don't remember his exact words. But he said that the cops aren't going to do anything to a man who has a rifle. Mm-hmm. So he's basically indicating that he would be willing to use that rifle on police.
Yeah.
He's armed. They're very clear about the fact that they're armed. The way that they've been treated with, such careful, We don't
want to offend them.
I mean, it's amazing. And that's what leads to that sense of entitlement. He believes that he's undefeatable, right? That nothing bad could possibly happen to him because nothing bad does happen to guys who talk like this, who have the certain privileges that we talk about on the show that people deny on a regular basis. That right there is white privilege, okay? The fact that he's being taken care of by authorities, and what I mean by taken care of is they're not aggressive with him at all, right? The fact that he doesn't have to worry about the same violence and brutality that minorities in this country have to deal with is white privilege. That's what white privilege is, okay? It doesn't mean that you as a white individual didn't earn the things that you have in your life. It doesn't mean that you aren't a good person. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person by default just because you're white. It means that authorities handle you in a very different way from how they handle minorities. Yeah. If that was a black man sitting there saying that he has a rifle and he's willing to use it, I guarantee you he would not get the same treatment that this gentleman got in that video.
Yeah, exactly. They wouldn't have been there for 3 days.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they would have all been shot, but the cops would have been moved in, and they would have taken them out in handcuffs.
Yeah.
And that's what inevitably is going to happen here, unless they simply walk away, which is probably going to happen because, as I said, they're running out of Twinkies and Pop-Tarts. And look, it might seem like he said, I'm going to sit outside so they don't have to bust down the doors. Understand, it's not a great sacrifice. They already turned off the power to that place. It doesn't have heat anyway. It's probably snowing inside the buildings. Look, the guy comes across as an insane person. He says, you don't point a gun at someone unless you plan to shoot them. Oh, why do I have a gun in my lap? No big deal, no reason.
Yeah.
What the fuck do you have the gun for? So that you can kill people. And all the idiots who for the past 3 or 4 days have been telling me online, why do you keep saying that they're dangerous and violent? Why do you keep saying that? Maybe because they keep threatening to kill people. Maybe because when the cops go, he's implying he'll gun down the cops. So who do you care about more? The innocent cops who are just trying to do their jobs and are going to be killed by some asshole who's telling you days in advance he wants to kill them just so that he won't be led away into a box? As if he had to be sitting in front of that tarp in the first place? He'd have to fucking be there. You could be riding your cows and your giraffes back at your ranch if you wanted to. You chose to go to that place to make this stupid political stance. And they had a statement, by the way, from the Oath Keepers, because people have been criticizing them for having women and children there. Now, you don't see any in that video, but there are reports that there are women and children. And the Oath Keepers said in a statement, this is not a family event. The only people there should be the armed men who are willing to die there with Amon Bundy and his brothers and a couple of embedded reporters. The men who are willing to die there. And he's echoing that same language there, willing to die. These guys think that they're in this situation like Waco. That like, it's come to this. There's no way out. Like, they're not Thelma and Louise, man. You went there to make this political statement. And the reason is, and these guys go from state to state getting involved in these little local matters because they are so fucking desperate for the fantasies that they hold that they're the next fighters of the American Revolution, and they want to find it wherever they can. And I apologize. I love fantasy, and I have my own fantasies, but real life, unfortunately, is not as interesting as fantasy.
Why don't you tell us what your fantasies are?
My fantasy is not to die in a shootout with the police, I can tell you that. These guys want to be heroes, but you're not a fucking hero, man. You're not Divergent, you're not in Gryffindor, you're not a space marine. Real life ain't that exciting, and I apologize that you were born into America that didn't desperately need a revolution. The rest of us are just trying to get our fucking cappuccinos in the morning, make some work that hopefully people enjoy, do that every couple days, have some kids, and then die. That's life now, but these guys think that they're the last defenders of liberty. Because gun rights are so restrictive here that jackass is sitting there with a gun saying he's going to murder cops. Nobody's taking his gun away. How do they maintain these beliefs that they're living under the iron boot of some sort of weird hybrid of Mao and Saddam Hussein? We're way too liberal with these fucking people.
Yeah.
This is America, man.
Yeah.
And people are defending them.
I know.
People who wouldn't defend. If he looked anything other than what he looks like, they wouldn't be defending him.
So I want to talk a little bit about the people who defend them, because they are the same people who will defend police officials who gun down unarmed individuals or clearly use excessive force when dealing with people, right? These are the same people who think that it's okay for the cops to use this type of excessive force because, hey, you know what? The people that they attack were imminent threats to them. So the support is necessary. But at the same time, why isn't there support for cops in this scenario?
Yeah.
Right? There's very little support for cops. Cops are the enemies in this case. You have people who are protesting, claiming that they're willing to use their firearms against these cops, and the same people who've been defending the cops who shoot down black people are unwilling to defend the cops in this situation. It's really interesting how the support is convenient based on what your agenda is.
Yeah. Yeah, and understand, before you think that we have just revealed some sort of hypocrisy that we have, no, we're using the comparison between how these two different groups are treated to point out the inequity in one of the sides. We're consistent. We don't want the cops to kill either group of people. I want the cops to go in, handcuff these jackasses, and put them in jail for a couple of months, which is probably what's going to end up happening. We don't want anyone to be killed by the cops. That's entirely consistent.
Yeah.
Fools.
I'm sorry that your life is boring, though.
It is. No, I have fun at work at the very least.
I mean, spice that shit up.
That's why I play a lot of games, I guess. I don't know. Life is as exciting as you make it, but you have to choose how you're going to make it exciting.
Well,
I think
they're trying to make their lives exciting.
In an antisocial way.
Yes.
I would say. And you touched on really fast. Maybe at some point I'll make a video about this. There is, and we've mentioned this before on the show, there is this fundamental doublethink in the core of a lot, not all, conservative libertarians especially, where they say, we love the military, support the troops, why don't you support the troops? I'm going to join a militia because someday I might need to kill our armed forces when they try to stop me. And the cops need to be defended. Why don't you support our men in blue? Blue lives matter. If they try to stop me from my protest, I'm going to gun them down. And then in the background, you got a lot of idiots on Twitter saying those guys are perfectly right to say that. Decide what your view of the government is, man. You can't keep saying you support our troops and you respect them more than any other person in the world when you are just itching to blow some of their heads off. That sort of hypocrisy gets annoying after seeing it for a decade or two. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's jump to something very light. I'm going to shake it out a little bit before we switch to this because it's a little bit awkward of a transition. Marco Rubio this week found himself the butt of a joke, not over his policy, but over his choice of footwear, which you're going to see in this photo, which was originally taken by the AP, if we could bring this up. It was tweeted out, received many retweets from Michael Barbaro. Marco Rubio is rocking some seriously fashionable black boots today in New Hampshire. Now, yes, those are booted heels, I guess you would say. They do look quite fashionable. I think he was being honest there with a bit of a smirk on his face. But it wasn't long before other people had picked this up, very high-profile people, and began to run with it. Rand Paul is the first you're going to see in this video.
Hey guys, I'll be on The View in a few minutes. I'm here in Whoopi Goldberg's office trying to choose some shoes. We've seen Rubio has those cute new boots, and I don't want to be outdone.
Cute little boots. Whoopi has a crazy amount. Oh, was it Oprah Winfrey or Whoopi, did she say?
I don't remember.
Which one was it? Whoopi. Okay, that's what I thought he said. That was a lot of shoes for at your workplace. That's crazy. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I mean,
she's getting off light here.
She's wealthy, so.
Yeah, she's very wealthy.
Yeah.
And I often like her points on The View. Sometimes she goes a bit far. But anyway, so he's implying that Marco Rubio loves to wear cute little boots. Cute little boots. I wonder if he chose those words for any particular reason. Next, you're going to see Rick Tyler here. A vote for Marco Rubio is a vote for men's high-heeled booties. Okay. That is Senator Ted Cruz's communications director, by the way, not just some random person on Twitter. Let's see. Casey Hunt tweeted out, Jeb Bush traded cowboy boots for shoes that are better in New Hampshire snow. They're not high-heeled, he says, for the record. Hashtag Bootgazi. And that is a representative of his campaign as well. And so, look, they're being very harsh on him.
Yeah.
And perhaps implying that he might be a bit questionable in orientation. That seems to be what they're doing.
I don't know what their intentions are. Are they just trying to,
We know what their intentions are.
Maybe. I don't know if I want to give them the benefit of the doubt because I don't think they really deserve it. Maybe it's like friendly razzing because I don't see how those boots are in any way, shape, or form interesting.
Yeah.
They're decent-looking boots. Who cares? It's probably the most interesting thing that Marco Rubio has ever done. But the fact that they're focusing on his footwear is incredible to me. Dude, the frontrunner in your party just released an ad that was so deceptive, that was so ridiculous. And instead of attacking him and attacking him as aggressively as possible, you're attacking Marco Rubio for his footwear? It's incredible to me. Donald Trump lies about the fact that Mexican immigrants are pouring into the country. A recent study by Pew found that there are more Mexicans leaving the country than entering the country.
Yeah. Over the time period, like 140,000 more left than entered. Yeah.
Between 2009 and 2014. You guys should look into that study. It's incredible. And also, they just flat out used footage from Morocco and made it seem like it was the border in Mexico.
Yeah.
I don't know. If I was a Republican politician, I would probably want to attack the front runner, not go after Marco Rubio's footwear.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. Now, lest you believe, so you're very on the record, you don't care about his boots. I would also like to say, I don't care about his boots. In fact, well, I do care a little bit. Can we bring up the boots? I'm not mad at him over the boots. We could show there. Those are nice-looking shoes. And I often criticize the fact that they feel they need to dress identically to each other as some sort of uniform. I like that he's doing something a little bit different, even if it does, as Joe Scarborough says, look like something Austin Powers might wear. I imagine those would be reviewed quite well on Styleog. There's nothing wrong with those boots, I don't think.
Maybe I'm desensitized to these boots because I'm Armenian, and all you need to do is add a pointier tip to them, and they're like the most Armenian boots ever made, right? They're fine. They're totally fine. Everyone needs to calm down. Marco Rubio, rock your boots.
Yeah.
I think you're ridiculous when it comes to a million other things like reproductive rights. But this is a non-issue. And one of the reasons why Trump continues to be the front runner is because his competition is weak sauce.
Yeah. It's purposefully weak sauce. So the reason that we want to cover this is not because we think the boots are terrible, but because whether it's society, and I'm sure that there's a bit of razzing or whatever, but razzing is one thing, and razzing when you're competing for the position of a lifetime is a slightly different thing. And they are focusing on it because it's easy to. It's less than 1 month till the first Republican primary. And all of the people who are not Donald Trump are showing that they are still not willing to show, I'm not even going to use the term of anatomy, they don't have it in them to attack him in an effective way or even try to. They just keep punching down. It's like a gunman is rampaging through your school or something and you smack a puppy. Like, who cares about the fucking puppy? Get the gunman. But they're not willing to do it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's a weird analogy. I don't know what that means anymore. But yeah, anyway. I'm going to have to look into some booted heels. I could use a little bit of a boost height-wise. Anyway, let's jump to something perhaps a little bit more serious. What is the difference between a socialist and a Democrat? That is the question that was presented to Hillary Clinton on Hardball with Chris Matthews. And I would say in advance that she gave an incredibly unsatisfying answer to a question that's not all that difficult. But let's have you decide.
I want to try to help you, for this audience tonight, our audience, locate yourself politically in this country. Now, we have Trump out there and we have Bernie out here. Now, Bernie calls himself a socialist. Nobody uses a derogatory term anymore. He loves to have that label. He's never ran as a Democrat. He runs against Democrats up there in Vermont. You're a Democrat. I'd say you're a pretty typical Democrat in the tradition of the Democratic Party. And Humphrey, the rest of them, Scoop, not even Scoop, I'd say Mondale, you're somewhere in there. What's the difference between a socialist and a Democrat?
Well,
is that a question you want to answer, or would you rather not?
Well, you'd have to ask.
Well, see, I'm asking you. You're a Democrat. He's a socialist. Would you like somebody to call you a socialist? I wouldn't like somebody calling me a socialist.
But I'm not one.
Okay, what's the difference between a socialist and a Democrat? Last question.
I can tell you what I am. I am a progressive Democrat. I'm a progressive Democrat.
How's that different than a socialist?
Who likes to get things done and who believes that we are better off in this country when we're trying to solve problems together, getting people to work together. There will always be strong feelings, and I respect that from, the far right, the far left, libertarians, but whoever it might be. We need to get people working together.
No, that's fine. That's good. Yeah, there's always going to be beliefs from the far right, the far left. Screw y'all. That was an amazing response there.
She is not a progressive Democrat.
She is a progressive on a number of issues.
She's a progressive on some issues, but I would not make the argument. Look, let me get one thing out of the way, okay?
Do it.
Reproductive rights are important. Gay rights are important. All of these little social issues are extremely important. I care about them. We talk about it on the show on a regular basis. It matters to me. However, okay, those are tiny, tiny issues compared to the crony capitalism that Hillary Clinton is a proponent of, okay? So she's not a progressive Democrat. You can't just say, oh, I'm a progressive when it comes to reproductive rights. I'm a progressive when it comes to gun laws. I'm a progressive when it comes to gay marriage. I wasn't before, but I am now.
Yeah.
Now that it's convenient for me to be progressive. But you're not really truly a progressive when you refuse to regulate the same banks and the same corporations that got us into an economic meltdown back in 2008.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not a progressive. Okay, Bernie Sanders, progressive.
Yeah.
You, not so much. So that annoyed me. Another thing that annoys me is Chris Matthews. Chris Matthews needs to understand what it means to frame a question, and he also needs to understand that framing questions in a way to get a result that you're in favor of is not journalistic integrity, okay? Or it goes against journalistic integrity. I don't care what you think, Chris Matthews. You're doing an interview with Hillary Clinton because the public cares what she has to say. So instead of sharing what you think about Hillary Clinton's political identity before you ask her about her political identity, just ask her about her political identity. I don't care what you think about her political identity. You can opine about that later.
Yeah,
okay?
and he probably will.
And he will, and that's fine. At least I know what to expect in that situation. In this case, you're conducting an interview. No one cares about you. It's all about her. Ask the questions and be quiet.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wouldn't want to be called it, but maybe you're a disgusting little being. So why don't you admit to that? Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. When you're interviewing someone, you're asking questions and they're talking. That's why I don't like doing interviews, because I want to talk. I don't want to just ask questions. But he doesn't seem to understand that. And if you're going to go to all the trouble of bringing in Hillary Clinton and then going into a firehouse so that you can patronize everybody in a way that I've never seen before. I've never seen an interview literally in front of a fire truck. Yeah, we get it. She's a person of the people. But that's just insane that they chose to do that. And so she, I guess... So we have this today, and we had the Bernie speech yesterday. And so both candidates have had an opportunity to differentiate themselves from each other. And so yesterday, Bernie Sanders says, I'm not just going to say cut it out to the bankers. I'm going to break up the big banks, and I'm going to make a number of necessary systemic changes to the way that the banks work, the way that the Fed works, the way that the boards work that control those organizations, to credit card fees and credit card interest rates. I'm going to do all that stuff, and I'm going to make good on the promise of a far more liberal economic system.
And you know what that is? That's a progressive Democrat.
That's the progressive Democrat.
Yes.
And she chose to differentiate herself by saying, he crazy. And I'm not a socialist. I'm not a socialist at all. That's a terrible answer to the question, man. It's a terrible answer.
So do you guys understand where I'm coming from? Look, the beginning of my commentary is going to be misrepresented, so I want to be absolutely clear about something. All of these social issues, again, are extremely important.
Yeah.
But the one thing that impacts everyone is the crony capitalism that we've fallen victim to in this country.
Yeah.
And the only candidate right now, the only candidate who wants to combat that is Bernie Sanders. And if you ask me, that is what progressive politics is all about.
Or should certainly be about now.
Should be about. It's not about picking and choosing some social issues and telling the public that, hey, I'm progressive on these issues, therefore I represent the progressive electorate.
Yeah.
You don't. A real progressive would look out for the people who are working full-time jobs and still don't make enough money to put food on the table for their families.
Yeah.
That's what a true progressive does.
Yeah.
That's what I have to say about that.
I like that answer better. Anna Kasparian for president 2016.
No. I sure as hell would never want to be president. No. That sounds terrible.
I can't imagine running. Not while there's money in politics. Hopefully we'll get rid of that in a year or two.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to TYT. Anna
love that every
Kasparian
time.
and John Iadarola.
Hi,
You guys laugh every time, and I don't find it that funny, but I love that you laugh.
It's just a tone that you don't use for anything other than saying, hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Cenk actually started using that years ago, but he stopped. Like, I never hear him say that anymore. Anyway, we have a great hour ahead for you guys. I want to read some TYT Lives before we get to some of the stories I have for you. Bishy K Guy commented on Marco Rubio's boots, and he said, those shoes are gayer than the gay sex I have. Hashtag Bootgazi. Hashtag TYT Live.
Wow. Now he'd know. I mean.
Well, you should see Persian and Armenian footwear, because if you think those boots were gay looking.
I think they looked perfectly fine.
I thought they looked fine. I don't know.
Could have used more heel.
I like flamboyant footwear.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out and say it. Proponent of flamboyant footwear. Okay, Jake in the boiler room says Hillary Clinton is progressive on issues when big business says it's cool. Any progressive policy that threatens corporate profits would be vetoed by her. So I got a tweet that wasn't chosen for us to read, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you what it said. One person was like, I get what Anna's saying, but she's not the person who decides what it means to be progressive. I know I'm not the person who decides what it means to be progressive, but progressives are supposed to look out for the little people, right? They're supposed to look out for the powerless. And right now, the most powerless people in this country are those who are poor, those in the working class, and increasingly those in the middle class.
Yeah.
And Hillary Clinton's fiscal policy is questionable, to say the least. It's very, very similar to what conservatives believe in. And that in and of itself is not progressive. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so I'm not trying to create a new definition of what it means to be progressive.
Yeah, no one person gets to decide, and at the same time, every individual person needs to decide.
Exactly.
What's supposed to happen is that you have your core values, and those transition into policies as you become politically sophisticated. The problem is that when you allow money to be involved, then whatever her values are, maybe she's a lovely person, but those values never make it into policies because they're blocked by the steel curtain of big campaign finance.
Exactly. Also, Seditionist Lives Matter says, oh no, that was a tweet. I'm sorry about that. TYT Lizard says, is that navy pants and black shoes? Shame. Shame, shame, talking about Marco Rubio. I didn't know that there was a rule against that.
I think that it was more of a rule decades ago. I think that it's becoming more acceptable, but I also don't host dialogue, so.
Kenzie Cook.
I would wear brown, though.
You would?
Yeah, it's safer.
Wait, brown pants or brown shoes? With navy pants?
Yeah, possibly.
Oh, you are so wrong. Okay.
Oh, I'll show you.
Kenzie Cook says, I love when John Iadarola hulks out. Amen, man.
I didn't know that I did that.
Yeah, you did. You kind of when you were talking about how boring your life was.
I turned green.
Yeah. All right, let's get to
queasy.
the news.
Anyway.
All right. We start off with a very serious story and a disturbing one at that. More than 100 women have come forward in Hamburg and Cologne, Germany, with allegations of sexual assault, sexual harassment, and theft during New Year's celebrations in the country. Now, this story was underreported by the media and, according to some critics, under-investigated by police. And we'll get to those details in a second. But first, let's get to the basics. Cologne police received more than 100 criminal complaints from women who said they had been sexually assaulted or robbed by gangs of men of Arab or North African appearance in the city center during New Year's Eve festivities. Now, it seems that what happened was a concerted effort. It wasn't as though random men were attacking women during these celebrations. It seemed very much something that was planned, something that was premeditated, and something that was orchestrated. Now, police have said that about a quarter of the complaints related to sexual assaults, including rape, and that they believe the assaults were probably intended to distract the victims, allowing attackers to steal mobile phones and other devices. So women had their phones stolen, they had their bags stolen. Oftentimes what would happen is they would be sexually harassed in some way, and then that would lead to someone else immediately stealing their stuff.
Yeah.
There were 3 reports or allegations of rape. The rest involved theft, sexual assault, sexual harassment.
Yeah. And I also wonder, is it 3 reports specific to what is expected to be a somewhat, at least loosely affiliated group of people? Because I imagine in a large city on New Year's Eve, tragically, there are probably more than that normally.
There probably were more cases, but the thing that I want to be absolutely clear about is it all happened in the same area.
Yeah.
So there were 2 areas that were affected by this. There was Cologne and Hamburg. And so the majority of these allegations came from Cologne. And it all kind of started when authorities noticed that people were using fireworks in an unsafe way. And so they evacuated the area, realizing that people were going to be injured. But then a group of men came back anyway, and police did nothing about it, and that's when the assaults took place.
Yeah.
So we do have a few videos for you, and I want you to take a look at the first one. It's some of the victims talking about what they experienced and what they saw.
Only identifying herself as Linda, this victim says she is too scared to go out alone and still has nightmares. I thought the whole time in the crowd they could kill us or rape us and no one would even notice. Nobody noticed and nobody helped us. I just wanted to get out. Other women agreed, saying there was no one to help them. We ran to the police, but we saw the police were so understaffed. They couldn't take care of us, and we as women paid the price.
So similar attacks were reported in Hamburg on New Year's Eve, with 39 reported sexual assaults and 14 robberies. This is an incredible story. So look, there are those who want to look at a terrible story like this from a rational, logical perspective, not jump to conclusions, and figure out exactly what's going on. So far, 3 people are being investigated. They are in custody, and we don't know who they are. We don't know what their background is. There are very few details into that. So the accusations that police aren't doing enough to investigate might be true, because I feel like it's January 6th, and if this happened New Year's Eve, there should be more people in custody. There should be further investigations to figure out exactly what happened. Also, if police had evacuated that scene because of the fireworks, I don't really understand why they allowed people to come back and they didn't do anything to kind of disperse the crowd to ensure that everyone was safe.
Maybe they thought there were different people that were going to the area. I honestly don't know. And so this sounds like what you hear about in some areas of the world, where they'll use little petty things distracting you, touching you, or something like that, to have you focus on that so that you can then be robbed. And it seemed like there were a lot of robberies. Obviously, there were a lot of sexual assaults as well. And so the real problem, I think, is, and look, I don't know how much the police have been doing in response to this. If it's been 5 days, I think that it's hard to imagine many new leads popping up, perhaps. But if they're using crowds of people so that they can sort of hide in plain sight with anonymity, because there's so many people, it becomes difficult to identify particular ones. And if they then disperse, and it's New Year's Eve and it's nighttime, that becomes incredibly difficult to track those people down. I mean, maybe there's some video camera footage that they can find or something like that, but that sounds difficult.
It sounds difficult, but at the same time, I mean, New Year's Eve is when people get rowdy. This is an area that is known for having rowdy parties and celebrations for New Year's Eve. I know that in the United States, we ramped up security in all major cities ahead of New Year's Eve because we were worried about terrorist attacks and things like that. I feel like there could have been more preparation ahead of time, and now that this has happened, I do have issues. Look, I'm not an expert on what the police are doing, so I don't want to comment too much on that, but I do want to comment on the media. So this story should have been huge on January 1st, but I didn't hear anything about it. I mean, it might have been reported a little bit, and there's some accusations that the media has been careful to cover this story because they want to be politically correct when it comes to refugees and the large amounts of people that have immigrated to the country recently because of the crisis in the Middle East, okay? Yeah. So more than 1 million people have come into Germany because of what's happening in Syria. And there are those who I think are wrong in jumping to conclusions and already deeming this the outcome of Syrian refugees being accepted. But I do think that you have to be a journalist and you have to cover this story as accurately as you possibly can. They said the majority or all the women who have been interviewed by police said that they seem to be of Arab descent or they seem to be from North Africa. There's nothing politically incorrect about saying that. That's what the victims are saying.
Just report it.
Report it. It's not a big deal, okay?
Yeah, crimes need to be reported.
Here's where it becomes wrong as a journalist, when you start immediately jumping to conclusions and saying, yeah, it's the Syrian refugees, that's what this is.
Yeah.
We don't know. It could be. I have no idea, right? You hold off on making those accusations and you wait until you have some hardcore evidence to pinpoint exactly what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I assume at least locally the news was going out, and it should. Obviously, crimes have been committed. I would imagine, and this is sort of maybe a cynical view of the world right now, we get very little international news in America in the best of times, especially as more and more newspapers have been shut down and more major media outlets have cut back on their foreign reporting and things like that. And so when we get foreign news, it tends to be around acts of terrorism, vehicles like a ferry going under or a plane disappearing. Our country is so violent every single day that since no one died, in America, I don't even know if it rises to the level of news. I mean, we have so many shootings and so many rapes every day in our own country.
Look, my criticism is, of course, of American media, but I've been reading about criticisms of media in Germany for refusing to cover it, for not covering it
There's no excuse for
aggressively
German
enough.
media not to cover it.
Exactly. And look, I don't live in Germany. I don't know how much coverage Germany has done. I'm just echoing what the victims in Germany are concerned about, what some of the politicians in Germany are concerned about. And there have been protests in Germany after this happened and after people felt that the authorities weren't doing enough and that journalists weren't doing enough.
Yeah.
But another thing that I wanted to quickly point out was the mayor of Cologne making statements about how this could have been prevented. And I can't even believe these statements were made. So Henriette Recker says the following: women would also be smart not to go and embrace everyone that you meet and who seems to be nice. Such offers could be misunderstood, and that is something every woman and every girl should protect herself from. That is...
I'm sure she's trying to do it to be helpful. It doesn't seem like the most helpful advice necessarily, and I imagine it probably goes without saying.
What the fuck is wrong with people? What is wrong with people? Are you seriously going to say that, hey, you know what, maybe these women were being too friendly, it's their fault? No, you don't blame them. Look,
it's also objectively untrue. Crowds were going up to the people. It's not like they were like, hey, come over here.
No, but this is the world we now live in, right? Where you're constantly in fear because if anything bad happens to you, it's your fault. You shouldn't have been out partying. You shouldn't have been dressed, in a revealing way. You shouldn't have been too friendly to these guys because, these guys don't understand. If you're too nice to them, they might think that it's open season and they can do whatever they want to you. No, the women who are victims in this case did absolutely nothing wrong. If anything, the only thing that's wrong in this story is the lack of coverage on it and the lack of seriousness in dealing with it. This is a serious issue. If hundreds of women were attacked during these New Year's Eve celebrations, then we need to have investigations to figure out exactly what's going on. I know there are some authorities that are already doing investigations, but A, let's not jump to conclusions about, oh my God, these are Syrian refugees, because we don't know. And B, let's ramp up the investigations and figure out why this happened, okay? Yeah. Let's do things to ensure that this doesn't happen in the future. If they are Syrian refugees, all right, they need to be in jail. They need to be in prison. They need to be prosecuted, and we need to deal with them immediately.
Regardless of who they are.
I don't care what their background is whatsoever. And if it turns out that the vast majority of them are Syrian refugees or refugees, period, then let's figure out what we can do to have proper screenings to ensure that we don't allow dangerous people into the country. Okay? I'm fine with that. That's fine.
Yeah, look, almost everything about what she said in particular seems stupid, and I have to assume that if you're one of the people who was victimized on this night, extremely objectionable and offensive, because it implies that even days after more and more details of what happened have been coming out, it doesn't appear that the mayor understands what happened. The idea that it was a series of coincidences that were brought about by women being too inviting. No, it was bands of people going around apparently in an organized way to either sexually assault and or rob people. It doesn't appear that they needed any invitation, that they needed any encouragement,
That's
or that
exactly right.
they were robbing people wearing a particular type of legging. No, this is organized crime going around. And it seems from her statement, although I'm sure she is trying to show that she understands, it doesn't appear that she understands what actually happened.
No, I don't know what she's thinking. I don't know why she made those statements. I don't know why she thought that it would be acceptable to make those statements. But I think it's insulting to both men and women because she's implying that men are such morons and such idiots and such sexual predators that the second a woman is nice to them, then they're going to rape you.
Yeah.
And they're going to steal shit from you. That's how men work. And it's also obviously very insulting to the victims who did absolutely nothing wrong here. And it seems as though she's placing the blame on them. So that's also something that obviously grates on my nerves.
Yeah.
But this is a serious situation. And I don't want to give you guys any speculation, any misinformation. We don't know much right now. And as soon as we do, I promise to update you on this story because I think it's an important one. But one thing that I refuse to do is say, hey, you know what? They look like Arabs. They look like they're from North Africa. These must be terrible Muslims, and we should ban them all from the country. I'm not going to make that statement, so if that's what you're looking for, sorry. But I'm also not going to be politically correct in covering these stories or be too concerned about being politically correct. If they are of Muslim descent, if they are people who are allowed into the country, then there's a problem there. But we don't know yet, and we need to wait and see.
Yeah, and again, regardless of who it is, track them down, put them in jail.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm in an angry mood today.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah,
With such a light story.
I want to go back to the days when we did camel toe stories and life was so
I have
fun.
one actually. Here, let's talk about this camel toe story.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
They're all British. Anyway.
They are?
I'm kidding. I don't actually have a camel toe story on me right now. I can get one. You want to take a break? Do you want to take a break?
No, it's okay.
Then,
Let's go to Alabama for a little bit.
Okay.
A state Supreme Court judge in Alabama refuses to listen to a Supreme Court ruling indicating that gay marriage is legal in the United States, and he continues to urge judges in the state to deny same-sex couples marriages. Now, this is a judge that you probably have already heard about, Alabama Chief Justice Roy Moore. And recently, he issued an administrative order statewide Wednesday on marriage licenses that stated, until further decision by the Alabama Supreme Court, the existing orders of the Alabama Supreme Court that Alabama probate judges have a ministerial duty not to issue any marriage license contrary to the Alabama Sanctity of Marriage Amendment or the Alabama Marriage Protection Act remain in full force and effect. So, in essence, what he's saying is, I don't care that the Supreme Court ruled that the ban on gay marriage is unconstitutional. Here in the great state of Alabama, we don't believe in same-sex marriage. Mm-hmm. Therefore, do not issue same-sex marriages.
I wonder how that's going to work out for him. I wish that he had taken a minute to Google the definition of supreme, because I don't think he understands the relationship between the Supreme Court at the federal level and courts at the local and state level, even the Supreme Courts of states. You don't get to say, we're just not going to apply it.
Whatever happened to judges being unbiased, being objective? But judges are supposed to be part of a system that enforces laws that are currently in place, right? Your state law means nothing when it comes to the Supreme Court and what they've ruled.
Yeah.
They have ruled that same-sex marriage is allowed in this country. So you, as an Alabama Chief Justice, don't really matter.
Yeah.
Right? Your political views, your social views don't matter when it comes to this issue. And so you're not supposed to be an activist. You're supposed to be a judge that enforces laws, that understands what the current laws are and makes rulings based on that. But he's not doing that. He's doing the exact opposite of that.
Well, this is the pattern that we always see, that so long as they can have a law at the federal level like DOMA or at a lot of those state levels, they'll say, well, we're simply enforcing the law. And as soon as the law is overturned, fuck the law. We're doing it anyway. So then you didn't really care anyway. It's some sort of personal vendetta. His family life is apparently fucked up in various ways, and so he's trying to take it out on the rest of the people in Alabama. But what's especially sad about this is that they had this period where the ridiculous conservative Christian tyranny existed across the country, and gay marriage was illegal around the country for a very long time. But like, we've so clearly moved past this, that these last, like, the limb is barely kicking as the person dies in this case. They're going to have a movie someday about the legalization of gay marriage, and Roy Moore might well be a very small character in it. But this isn't even going to be a scene in the movie. At the end, after the heroes are, like, triumphant and the music is all, like, encouraging, they're going to show a black and white picture of Roy Moore and say that he died penniless and drunk years later. That's the only inclusion he's going to have. This pathetic attempt to exert some sort of will, moral, or judicial over the country. Nobody cares about this, and this is going to be overturned, and if it's not immediately, then Alabama is going to suffer the consequences, probably economically, because the federal government can enact various damaging counterattacks against Alabama.
This is the same judge who put up a Ten Commandments monument in Alabama's courthouse.
Yeah, okay. That was quaint by comparison.
So we live in a country that is supposed to be founded on the separation of church and state. But it's so ingrained in our politics, whether it has to do with our judges or our politicians running for the highest office in this country, right? How many non-Christians have been elected as president of the United States? I mean,
well, Barack Obama.
That we know of,
yeah.
Right?
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I know you're kidding. But religion is so ingrained in everything that we do in this country, and it's supposed to be the opposite. Yeah. We're not supposed to have activist judges. His own religious morality is not supposed to be forced upon us, and that's exactly what happens with judges like this, and it makes me sick to my stomach. He is not good at his job. He should not be employed as a Chief Justice in the state of Alabama.
It's amazing that back then they were able to erect this separation between church and government, because obviously they were very different people. We like to imagine that we've been steadily becoming less and less religious, and lately that has been the trend. But they were actively deists and non-believers and secular in orientation, and for whatever reason, economic problems, military problems, we had these rebirths of Christianity and evangelical religion in this country. And It's amazing that we're worse off in terms of our general philosophy in a lot of quarters of this country than we were hundreds of years ago.
Why is Roy Moore thinking about gay sex right now? That's what I want to know.
You think he's thinking about it right now?
Yes, I do think. I think he's thinking about it because he's probably wanting to do it himself, to keep it real. Here's the thing. I feel like people who are firm and comfortable in their sexuality don't worry about the sexuality of others. They just don't, right? Yeah. I have never, ever thought about gay sex, except for when we cover stories like this. I'm not interested in gay sex, but people who want to have gay sex, do you, boo? Like, that's your life.
Or do the other person of the same sex.
Whatever you want to do, right? But with this judge and with so many conservatives that we cover, when it comes to the gay rights issue, they just can't get past gay sex. They can't stop thinking about it.
It's amazing. I mean, I don't care if other people are having same sex. I don't care if other people... There's very few straight couples that I care about the sex they're having. One or two celebrity couples. Other than that, it's not even just that we like gay people so we don't care what they're doing. Like, the idea that you care so much about what other people do in the bedroom, I don't care. And it's amazing to me. Like, Roy Moore, does he not have an Xbox? Get a fucking hobby.
The idea of him playing an Xbox, you play an Xbox, right? Is that the right?
Play with an Xbox. I don't know what the terminology is. You use an Xbox, I suppose.
Using an Xbox is hilarious. Yeah. Anyway, your son has prescription drug issues. You should deal with that instead. Yeah. Right?
Yeah,
but he should... more of a priority than prying into the personal lives of same-sex couples.
Totally. They should let him go for the marijuana stuff, though.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. Yeah. Anyway.
It's injustice.
It really is. All right, moving on. The majority of Americans believe that free speech should be restricted on college campuses. At least that's according to a recent poll by Huffington Post and YouGov. Let me give you the details. 43% of the respondents, and there were about 1,000 nationally representative individuals in this study, or survey, I should say, said that making sure that students have an environment free from discrimination, even if that means placing some limits on what students can say, is more important than students having an absolute right to free speech. Now, let's stop for a second. It's important to mention that no one in this country has an absolute right to free speech. Yeah. However, a huge chunk of the respondents in this survey believe that, hey, you know what? discriminatory language is a bad idea. We think that it's more important to limit that, restrict that, than to have absolute free speech on college campuses. What say you, John Iadarola?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what an absolute right to free speech would seem like. I mean, can I just stand in front of the lecture hall, in front of the teacher, and just scream? No, there's obviously going to be limitations, and I'm extremely frustrated with both people who want more free speech and people who want less free speech. I find both of them insufferable at this point because people refuse to accept what free speech actually, like when we say we have a right to free speech, it has nothing to do with any of this. None of this, whether less or more, it has nothing to do with what colleges do. It only has to do with the government being barred from cutting down on your ability to express yourself in certain ways.
So it depends. It depends on which type of college campus you're talking about.
Yeah,
so
it could be a government-run college, I suppose.
So if it's a state school, there are certain First Amendment protections that the students have because those are essentially government employees, right? When you're in a private institution, it's a little different, which is why we've done stories of private schools, whether it's a grade school or a college, limiting the free expression of its employees or its students, and it's actually okay for them to do that because it's a private college campus.
Yeah, they can totally do that.
Right. Go ahead.
I was going to say, a lot of people think that they're referencing the Constitution when they talk about free speech, but what they're really doing is they're saying that generally, as Americans and as most people around the world, we value the ability of people to express themselves in words and in other ways. And so they don't like when people try to stop that. And if I were to say right now that you shouldn't be able to do that, they would tell me to stop saying that, which I find to be ironic. Because they're cutting down on my free speech.
Right.
But no, yes, students should be able to demonstrate and protest and publish things that they want, and teachers should generally be free to publish what they want and say what they want and tweet what they want. I think that we should all be able to agree on that, but obviously there are certain things that you can't do.
Right. So my stance on this, I think, is pretty clear, but I want to just give you more detail into that. I think that free speech is incredibly important on a college campus because it's supposed to be this free marketplace of ideas where people are not afraid to share what their ideas are, even if their ideas might be a little offensive. Now, at the same time, you don't want your language to hinder someone else from sharing their ideas, right? So if you're on a college campus that allows you to say really terrible discriminatory things about minorities, well, then those minorities are already at a disadvantage because they're being deterred or discouraged from sharing their ideas, right? They're put in a hostile environment where they're unable to do what college students are supposed to do. So there was a similar survey done a few weeks back, and we talked about it. And that survey wasn't as specific. It didn't talk specifically about discrimination or, offensive race-related language. But this does. This specifically talks about discriminatory language. And I think that should be limited to some extent on a college campus. But it does become a slippery slope. Like, how do you define what is and isn't discriminatory?
Yeah, or what is and isn't speech. I mean, there are definitely universities where people, like, this obviously goes beyond it, but there's universities in Texas where people have thrown bleach balloons at minority students. There's places where they hang nooses around statues.
Yeah.
That is technically expression. I have little interest in you being able to do it, especially because it's not your property. Like all rights, you have rights to do a lot of whatever you want on your own property, but you can't just set off a bunch of toxic fumes that then drift over into other people's property. Your expression of your rights is not allowed to infringe on other people's. If a teacher is trying to teach and you don't like what he's saying because he's a liberal and you're a conservative or vice versa, you can't just keep yelling out that he's wrong. People have a right to be able to learn. That's a reasonable limitation on free speech. And you certainly can't create an environment where a group of people, whether a race or a gender or a religion or whatever, don't feel safe.
That's exactly right.
Now, we have to decide what makes a person feel unsafe or not. But some people are reasonable, and we can have that discussion.
So let me give you some more statistics from this survey. 38% said colleges should emphasize making sure that students have an absolute right to free speech, even if that means allowing offensive or racist comments. I don't fall in that camp either. So I don't agree with either camp. I'm at somewhere in the middle where I think certain language should be banned, because, again, it deters students from actually being part of the discussion. And you don't want to be in a university somewhere in the South, let's say, that just openly discriminates against minorities. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Again, it's supposed to be an environment for learning. At the same time, I'm against safe spaces. Like, for the love of God. The entire college campus
Well, that goes far beyond this.
Yes, it does go far beyond this. College students have gone too far in that they will protest certain speakers from coming in and sharing their ideas. Commencement speeches are a little different because it's your graduation. You want to enjoy and celebrate. Maybe you don't want an Ann Coulter giving a speech. I understand that. But if someone's coming in to give a lecture, you got to allow it. Even if someone has an ideology that goes against what you believe in. Because your ideology is supposed to be challenged on a college campus. You haven't even really formed an ideology yet. You're a child. I haven't formed an ideology yet, and I'm not a child, right?
I have 3.
We're growing as individuals. We're supposed to be, exposed to all these different ideas. And if we shut ourselves off to that, then we're not going to grow as people.
The only thing that the wrinkle, and I'm not going to turn this into a big it's one thing to allow people to come onto the campus. It's a different thing when you allow people to come on campus and be paid $75,000 to do it. And I was on a budget committee that paid for speakers, and some of these speakers cost a lot of money.
Right.
Like, I have no problem with Kissinger coming and giving a speech. I don't want $100,000 going to him to do it.
Yeah. I understand that. But here's the thing. There are plenty of professors at every university that you disagree with, and tuition goes toward those professors. You can't pick and choose who your tuition money goes to.
Yeah.
Sorry. Again, you're on a college campus. You're supposed to be exposed to ideas that might offend you a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, 53% stated that colleges should punish students who make racially offensive statements. Asked their opinion on the creation of departments specifically devoted to promoting diversity, though, 32% said they are an important initiative to support, while 42% called them a waste of money and resources.
Do you have the next stat on that?
Yes. The results were more lopsided on the question of whether a university president has a responsibility to address racist incidents on campus, with 72% supporting the notion and only 17% taking the opposite stance.
Yeah, well, I mean, that I think makes sense.
Yeah.
They are supposed to be the leader, and a lot of what college presidents do is simply go around and raise money for the university. But they should do more than that, and they are the biggest representative for this university. They are responsible for the well-being of the students and the faculty there and the people that work there. And so, yeah, of course they should make statements.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And sometimes be forced down when they have had years to address problems and complaints of students and they haven't done so.